Welcome to Trouble with Tish. I'm Tish and I be Trouble. And if you're a returner, welcome back.
Troubles on the mind, hands around your throat, out in open waters trying to stay afloat. Remember to forget the future and the past.
Alright, obviously we have Mask Monday going on, and since I'm already wearing the mask, it is time to read more of our book. We are on chapter 3. If you need a refresher on what has happened so far, my other 2 videos will be listed in a playlist, and I will link that at the end on the end screen if for you. Like I said, we are in chapter 3, and we're just going to get right into it. We are wearing the Biodance Biocollagen Real Deep Mask, and this is a collaboration with the Beauty Ninjas. It is Beauty Ninja Mask Monday, so the playlist will be linked in the description box below. Go check out the other ladies and see what they have going on for their Mask Mondays. Alright, without further ado, let's get into it. We are in chapter 3. The hunters and I returned to Brennus the next morning. As we approached the inn, Ingvar met us in the common area before the stable, a look of concern on his face. He knew we had intended to remain in the forest another night, and when he saw the bandage on the first hunter's leg as well as the wounds sustained by the others, his brows knit together. He kept his silence as we dismounted, waiting for Elmar to speak first. We were ambushed in the forest, he began to relate to Ingvar, when Elma came rushing past him and caught me in her arms. I knew I should not have let you go, she cried, and then held me in her at arm's length as she checked me for wounds. Elma, I am not hurt, I said, quite embarrassed at her behavior. Please, I promise you, I am all right, I continued softly. The poor woman was so distraught I thought she would faint right there in the street. She managed to calm herself, but did not release my hands as Elmar continued. As Latera said, she was not hurt, he continued. In fact, your stable girl showed remarkable courage, and if it were not for her, I may not have survived. I have come to ask your permission to bring her to Ashera's court to train her as one of us, a hunter. They both stared in amazement. Ingvar at the first hunter for asking his permission. Elma at me for what the first hunter had said, until Ingvar broke the silence. How did she show courage to you, my lord? He asked. Elmar related the events of the ambush to the confused innkeepers, and for the first time I heard how Mercari managed to surprise the hunters. The first hunter had chosen to remain uninvolved until the tracking event played out, and climbed an oak to observe from above. From his vantage point, he watched as Adhar's group closed in on the targets, but before this could occur, he was struck in the leg by a spear. This caused him to lose hold of the tree and fell to the ground, where he struck his head and was thus rendered unconscious. Finley continued the tale, saying that 5 demons had been upon him instantly, and he made the decision for him and Braun to return Elmar to the camp while the others engaged the vermin. He insisted that they were not followed back to the camp, but he believed that Mercari had tracked Elmar by scenting his blood. Finley related the end of the fracas against the 2 that remained in the forest, who were quickly dealt with, and Elmar explained to a bewildered innkeeper that I defended him against the demons that followed him to the camp. Ingvar rubbed his eyes with his great paw of a hand, needing more than a moment to absorb the information he had been given. You mean to tell me my stable girl did this? He asked incredulously. Yes, Elmar replied as he looked at me. Yes, she did. I owe her my life. There seemed to be something akin to pride in his eyes, and he looked at me with such intensity I blushed and turned away. Then Elma was patting my shoulder, and her face also beamed with pride. I always knew you were destined for great things, she said. I just wish I could have led you to them myself. You gave me a home and care and guidance when I was lost, I said as I returned her kind smile. I could not have asked for anything more. Since I had very few possessions, it only took me a short time to pack for my journey to the palace. While I gave my workbench a final examination and made sure everything was in order, I saw Elmar negotiating something with Ingvar. I realized the first hunter was attempting to compensate the innkeeper for taking his stable hand, and Ingvar was vacillating between wanting nothing because he released me in the service of the queen, and wanting something to offset the drop in business he would have once travelers learned they could no longer board their horses with me. At the very least, Elmar needed to pay for Shira, as she belonged to Elma, but Elma was arguing that I should take Shira as my own, and Ingvar thought the old pony would just take up space in the royal stable. They finally agreed that Elmar would compensate Ingvar for what I would have earned him the next season, and while I would ride Shira to the palace, she would be sent back to Brennus once I had reached my destination. Once an agreement had been reached, I emerged from the stable with my small pack. I said goodbye to my adopted parents and thanked them again for all they had done for me over the past 6 winters, for surely I would not have survived without them. Ingvar pressed a gold coin into my hand, whispering that he owed me so much more, and that I would always be welcome in their inn. Elma presented me with a loaf of bread still warm from her oven, before pulling me into such a tight embrace the loaf was squashed between us. We laughed as crumbs fell around our feet, and I assured her it would taste just as good in its flattened state. After I mounted Shira, I waved a final goodbye and followed the hunters out of Brennus, never looking back. The journey to the palace took 4 days, which surprised me. In Ganera, you could ride from one side of the kingdom to the other in 3 days, but the palace was in the center of Partholon, with the eastern border another 6 days beyond. The terrain was mostly rolling meadows and hills, and I learned that the west was renowned for its beautiful pastures and woodlands. The east and the north were mountainous, and the south was a desert with few inhabitants until you reached the sea. The palace was situated in the center of a great plain on the highest point, called the Hill of Ral. To the east was a second, smaller rise called the Hill of Torum. They were both named to commemorate those who had fought during decisive battles in the Great War. The former for a sorcerer who had turned on the prior king, and the latter for the one who gave her life to save Ashera. I learned more about Ashera's reign during those 4 days than I had in the 6 winters I spent at the inn. While we gathered around the fire at night, the hunters would tell stories of her victories in battle, and every evening the stories culminated in the telling of how Ashera took the old king's head and brought peace back to Partholon. All of the hunters behaved as if they truly loved and respected their queen, and I wondered if my father also inspired such devotion. While I had somewhat expected to learn more about the queen, I was not prepared for what else I learned at the second evening's camp. Finley had gathered wood and assembled it in a makeshift pit, and I watched in amazement as he whispered a few words and flames leapt from the center of the pile. I remember how quickly Elmar had started the fire the night before, and I asked Finley if he was a magic handler as well as a hunter. He told me demons were afraid of fire, therefore hunters are taught the necessary spells to create a fire at will. And, he continued with his eyes glinting, not only could he make things burn, but the first hunter could also make walls of flame leap forth from the ground, and Finley himself could create fire in the air and use it as a weapon. Finley demonstrated his skill in tossing fireballs about, and I, who had heretofore been terrified of magic, watched in rapt attention. I begged him to teach me, which he did, during the next day's ride. The lessons were going along fairly well until I singed Shira's mane and scared the poor thing out of her wits. After a stern lecture from the first hunter, Finley decided that lessons on fire starting were best left for less flammable environments. On the 4th day, as the suns climbed high overhead, we crested the Hill of Torum, and I saw the palace rise before me. It was made of a gray stone, polished until it shone like silver. There were 6 gleaming towers that rose up into the clouds, higher than any structure in Ganera. A high stone wall with one massive gate to the south and several watchtowers surrounded the palace. Above the gates were large statues depicting a stag and doe leaping towards each other, the fairy symbols of the god and goddess. Windows in the towers reflected the sunlight like jewels set into the stones, sparkling and many-hued. Not only was the palace colossal, but the area encompassed by the wall was extraordinary. It was so large that it seemed to be an entire city, not merely the residence of the queen. Elmar saw me staring at the structure in awe, and brought his horse around to ride at my side. "It's quite a sight, isn't it?" he asked. I was so overwhelmed I could only nod in response. He continued, "It's called Teguron. They say it was created the very day the land was formed. No one can recall a time when it was not here, and nothing is written about Partholon's history that does not mention it. It's as old as time itself. I'm sure it's not as amazing to you as it was to me when I first came here." since you were born in a castle. But I'm from a village smaller than Brennus. Where I was born is merely a thatched hut compared to what I see before me, I replied. I turned to him, and in all seriousness asked if I would be given a map to find my way around this stone labyrinth. He smiled and told me that it was not as confusing as it seemed from outside the wall. I followed him through the huge imposing gate to the right. We followed the curved wall, and I saw that it was indeed a city with smaller dwellings and a merchant's quarter. Elmar indicated various shops and what they carried, the location of the blacksmith and other trades. When we had traversed half the circumference of the wall and were directly behind the palace, we came upon a large arena with some sort of dormitory attached to it. This is the Sola, he said, indicating the small structure, where you will live with the other Nuvae. That's what we call those training to be hunters. Are there a lot of Nuvae? I asked. Yes, he replied, but not all become hunters. We continued our tour, and he led me to the royal stable, which was so large the stalls extended almost forever down a wide corridor. There were as many grooms as horses, and tack hung from the walls in every color and style. I remarked to the first hunter that if the stable in Brennus had been this fine, I might not have taken his offer to come to the palace. He laughed, and I noticed that several grooms looked at him curiously as if they had not heard him laugh in the past. Once the horses had been taken to their stalls, Elmar told me that he would bring me to the queen. When I protested that I could not possibly meet her in my current state, dusty from the road and dressed as I was, he replied that the queen was not the type to be swayed by one's outward appearance. He reminded me that she was a warrior herself, as well as Partholon's first huntress, and assured me that she would rather meet me now than be kept waiting. We entered the palace, and I saw the interior was constructed of the same smooth gray stone, highly polished and shining like liquid silver. The walls were adorned with large tapestries, mostly depicting victories in battle, and as we passed each, Elmar told me what it represented. There was one of Ashera beheading the prior king as she stood on the mound of decapitated demons, and another of Elmar himself surrounded by fallen enemies. I asked him about that scene, and he replied that occurred at the end of a long, arduous siege that resulted in him being named first hunter. The stag and doe motif continued throughout the palace, which I did not find unusual, and I also noted several symbols that were head or paw of a wolf. I had never seen this mark before, and asked Elmar what it signified. He replied that Ashera's seal was that of a she-wolf defending Partholon with her very life, as if the land were her cub. Elmar led me through the thick wooden doors into a great hall, and I saw Queen Ashera, who some called the Ruthless. She sat on a silver throne, set with blue stones, which gleamed as if it was carved from ice. The otherworldly light seemed to obscure her, and I could hardly see her within the glow until she rose and glided towards me. As she stepped forth from the ethereal radiance, I thought she was the most beautiful creature I'd ever seen. She was tall, maybe even taller than Elmar, and slender. Her blonde hair was so pale it was almost white, with undertones of blue, and it fell in waves past her hips. She had large, dark eyes, pale skin, and lips as red as rubies. The queen wore a silver and blue gown with a high neck and trailing hem, the diaphanous fabric swirling around her like mist. Not knowing what else to do, I fell to my knees and bowed my head before the gorgeous queen. "Rise, child," she said with a voice as lovely as her face. "I am not that sort of ruler." I stood before her, and she asked my name. "I am called Latera, my queen." The queen pushed back my hair and ran a slender finger across my ear. "You are not Fae," she stated. "I am not, my lady. I am human." She studied my features for a moment. "You look elfin to me. Are there elves in your family?" I answered that there were none, and Elmar stepped forward to address the queen. Latera killed 2 demons and gravely wounded Merskoth, who is now dead. He went on to explain the ambush and my role in protecting the first hunter. When his report was complete, she turned back to me with newfound interest. "Merskoth," she repeated, and I nodded in reply. "That is no small feat, my dear. Merskoth has been wreaking havoc in my land for many centuries." "That is what your first hunter tells me, my lady," I replied. "I want her to be trained as a hunter," Elmar continued. "She has good instinct and can already wield a sword better than most. I believe she will be an asset to your court." The queen pondered his words for a time before continuing. "You have never been wrong about hunters in the past, Elmar. I will admit that. Your judgment has always been sound." She turned to me and smiled, and I returned it gladly. "What do you think of Elmar's request? Do you want to devote your life to killing vermin and keeping Partholon's borders safe?" "I will do as you wish, my lady," I responded. The queen had so enthralled me that I felt I would do anything she asked, from hunting demons to scrubbing pots. "Then I have decided," she said. "Letera may enter the Sola, but first I want to hear how you came to be in my land, so very far from your home." Queen Ashera glided from the hall to her private sitting room and beckoned me to follow. Once we were seated, I told her everything, from how I was taken from Gannett to my 6 winters as a stable hand, to my astonishment at the immense weight of Elmar's sword. She listened to every word, paying close attention and never interrupting. When I finished, she was silent for a time, considering my tale. "You are not scared to face the demons?" she asked. "No, my lady, my only thought was to keep them from Elmar, who was hurt and unconscious." "Are you scared of me?" I was very confused by her question. "No, my lady, I am not." The queen studied my face as she continued. "You give me the impression that very little frightens you. Is that correct?" "It is," I responded. "I believe the first time I felt fear was when I thought my sisters would be harmed." "Was the last time when Mersgoth fell dead onto you?" she asked gently. A chill ran up my spine at the recent memory. "Yes, I wish I had not forgotten he was there. It was a mistake I will not repeat." The queen regarded me for a time and somehow knew what I was trying not to ask. "You want to know what they are," she said evenly. "I cannot believe such evil really exists," I said quietly. "We used to hear stories, my sisters and I, but we never thought they were real." I turned my wide eyes to Ashera's dark glinting pools and asked her what demon was, where they came from, and why they wanted to hurt us. "They're a result of a soul-eater trying to influence the daylight realm." I must have looked like a terrified child, which was not far from what I was at that moment, for the queen squeezed my hand assuringly as I asked her what a soul-eater could possibly be. "They are exactly what the name implies," she answered, "but they exist only in the underworld. They are jealous of those who walk in sunlight, and created the demon by stirring captured souls into a pocket of foul magic, leaving them to ferment and twist until they became the abominations you saw in the forest." "They seemed part human," I said, afraid they may be of my race. "They probably were. Dark magic cannot create life, only remove it. Therefore, demons have to take a female to procreate. They will use a female of any kind, whether it is a horse, or a fairy, or a human." Her dark eyes clouded over, while mine were filled with horror. "The overlords of the demons, what they call the Mordeth Gaul, is one called Azkaloth. He is said to have fey blood." "I have never even imagined that something so vile could exist," I declared, my voice thick with fury. "You have my word. I will not let those foul creatures harm any that I can defend." Ashera smiled and looked almost relieved that I had not run from the room. Much later I learned that many Nuvae leave Teguron once they become aware of a demon's true nature. "Letera, you remind me of myself as a young girl," she said, and I thanked her for the most generous of compliments. "I do not believe Elmar is wrong about you." We sat together until the elder son went to rest, and the queen shared a great deal of advice with me. Ashera told me that there was much to be learned in the Sola about combat techniques and swordplay. However, much could not be taught, only learned from experience. She told me tales of her youth, of the first demon she killed, and how she rebelled against the prior king to free her kind from oppression. The queen told me the royal line had become corrupt, and factions of Mordeth had enslaved the Fae. She overthrew the royal house and beat the demon scourge out of Partholon almost a millennia ago, and had defended her land and her people ever since. As I watched Ashera recount her youth, I began to admire her, and decided she was a righteous queen, and the devotion she inspired was well deserved. Alright, that is the end of chapter 3. Let me know, what do you think so far? Again, this is a collaboration with the Beauty Ninjas. The playlist will be linked in the description box below. Please go check out the other ladies and see what they have going on for their Mask Mondays. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe. All of that good stuff is below as well. I hope every single one of you has an absolutely amazing day, and I will see you all next time. Bye.
Troubles on the mind, hands around your throat, out in open waters trying to stay afloat. Remember to forget the future and the